Welcome to the Gur in Fangirl podcast, a podcast where we discuss pop culture and fandom. Each episode, we talk with celebrities, fans, and creators about their work in the media that inspires them. Now here's your host, the creator of the Squee project, filmmaker, fangirl, and feminist, Hansi Oppenheimer.
Hi, Max. How are you?
Hi, Hansi. How's it going?
It's good. It's really nice to meet you. I'm glad Debbie Roshan put us in touch. Yeah, she's awesome. And another, woman documentarian who I have a lot of respect for.
She helped make the difference with my career many, many years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, when my first book, Zombie Survival Guide, came out, the powers that be tried to position it as a comedy book and tried to position me as Mel Brooks Jr. And obviously it did not work. And it caused a huge backlash. It partially in the horror community because rightfully so, they did not know me. And they were being told that basically I was a celebrity kid's brat who was just taking a giant dump on everything that they loved. So why wouldn't they be resentful? So I had to take the marketing plan thrust upon me and thrust it away and market myself. And Fangoria was one of the first, possibly I think the first horror outlet that gave me the time to explain myself and introduce myself to this community. And Debbie was there with Fangoria Radio, with Dee Snider, and they were wonderful. So I will always be grateful to them.
Yeah. So, yeah, of course. So, that was sort of my question initially too. Like, how did someone who comes from, a family of comedy legends become, a horror kid?
Why wouldn't? Well, I mean, why wouldn't I? What is that's the thing is
right.
why does someone have to be a slave of their upbringing? Why?
Right.
It doesn't matter how someone is raised. What is in their heart and what is in their soul allows them to be free, obviously, and to make their own choices. And yeah, my dad was and is one of the funniest guys ever, but that didn't stop me from being into horror, being into science fiction, loving movies like Snow Beast and Night of the Living Dead, Alien, Jaws. I had a lot of fears growing up.
Were you a horror kid?
Well, yeah, but I wasn't a horror punishment kid. And what I mean is sometimes I meet certain horror fans who feel really in their core, in their guts, in their DNA, they feel very safe. They feel like the world is a very safe place and a very boring place and want to have the kind of safe thrill from a horror movie the way you get from a roller coaster where you can go, woo, but like you're not going to die. That's not who I am. I know what darkness and evil lurks on this planet and among our species. And so for me, the kind of horror that I love always has a solution. It's people trying to figure out problems. One of my favorite horror films of all time is The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing.
Clearly.
It's not just a bunch of horny teenagers and a token black guy who are just essentially being punished one after the other. And the thrill is in how they die. That wasn't it at all. It was these people trying to solve a problem and trying to figure it out and always being one step behind. And you're rooting for them. You got to root for them. So in the same way you're rooting for the crew of the Nostromo or the crew of the Orca.
Well, I understand the being afraid of everything. And I know you're not just a German Jewish background. That's part of your background, but that's part of my background as well. And so there's a whole PTSD that comes from that, growing up with that as your genetic background.
Yeah, maybe it does. I mean, I got a lot of DNA in there. I've got German Jew, Russian Jew, or Ukrainian Jew, but also Italian. I'm half Italian, and which is why I'm able to ride out this pandemic with leafy greens every day for dinner because my mother was a gardener, so she taught me how to grow stuff.
Your mother sounds amazing. I read that you were dyslexic and your mom put her career on hold and, you know, did everything she could to get you reading, which is an incredible, you know, not just a great talent, but what a wonderful parent.
She was amazing. And she was also a closet scientist.
Really?
And yeah, she loved science. Her favorite book was The Microbe Hunters by Paul Decreux. And would read to me about it and show me movies about people like Louis Pasteur. So that was my background, which is also why when I hear like we need stories about strong women, I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, I grew up in the house that my mother bought. You know, when my father didn't have a pot to piss in, my mom went out and made a movie called The Hindenburg and made enough money to buy us a house. So my mom was an equal partner for my dad. And so that's always sort of how I am too at home.
Yeah, so and then the military stuff I find really interesting. So were you in the military? Or are you just intrigued by military history?
No. I mean, the closest I ever came to the military was the first year in college during Desert Shield, Desert Storm when I was in Army ROTC. But like, that's not the military. I was like, you know, God knows what that was. I mean, I think all I ever did in ROTC was dry barf after running every morning. That's all I remember. What happened with the military was after World War Z came out, because I've been fascinated by it because my father was in World War II and all of his friends were in World War II and all of my mother's the men married to my aunts. That was, you know, I'm a Gen Xer, but my parents were greatest generation. So I put a lot of that into World War Z. World War Z got the attention of the United States military. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff read it, and I was asked to speak at the United States Naval War College. And
wow.
if you YouTube that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, well, and I said to them, I was like, are you sure you got the right guy? Are you sure there isn't like a Lieutenant Commander Max Brooks like wandering around Comic-Con going like, how the hell did I get here? What I was told I had done was present a very credible scenario of pandemic or of indeed global collapse for any reason. Because what I do in all my writings is I present a fictional threat with factual solutions. No magic bullet, no single hero, a big problem.
No hand of God.
Yeah, no hand of God, no cavalry riding over the hill. Yeah. Sort of, here comes a problem. How do we solve it with the tools and the skills that we have? Which, by the way, is how you solve a real problem. So the military asked me to speak, and then they asked me to come back, and then I started speaking at strategic studies groups. And then I was invited to be a senior non-resident fellow at the Atlantic Council's Brent Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security, and then the Modern War Institute at West Point.
Wow.
What I do for these I know I'm an outsider, but they are smart enough and brave enough to want an outsider's perspective.
Wow.
What I do is analyze threats that are not military yet, but if not dealt with, will become a military threat later on. So energy security, food security, logistics, pandemics. I've done some work for the Blue Ribbon Biodefense Panel. That's Tom Ridge, Joe Lieberman, Don Shalala, Tom Daschle, and they're trying to get us ready for the next gen of bio attacks. So my job was to take their information and distill it into a comic book to try to educate the public. Try to say, hey, yeah, like germ warfare has been with us since the beginning, and it's only going to get worse. And here's what we need to do to prepare.
Oh, if only they'd have spoken to you a couple months ago.
Well, look, here's why you should be so angry. Here's why everybody should be so angry. When you hear them say, oh, no idea, we got caught, we couldn't have envisioned. Bullshit.
Yeah.
Here it is. This is called the National Response Framework. This is the master disaster plan that the federal government has and updates constantly and wants you to read. And it outlines everything that could go wrong, including biological incidents.
Wow. And they just tossed it all out.
And they just tossed it all out. I mean, there it is in black and white, marching orders for everybody, from the president to the private sector down to like the local mayors. There it is, folks.
It's nice to see it in your hand, you know. There's nothing like seeing it, you know. That's
Yeah, and I didn't have to like go searching on the dark web. I mean, it's open source. It's on the FEMA site.
no
Like I
shit.
said, they want you to read this because we are a republic.
Yeah.
You know, people died in China because they didn't know. But people are dying here.
We knew. We could have been prepared.
We knew. The only innocent people in this are the Chinese people, because their government won't let them vote and won't let them learn and lies to them. And if you try to sound the alarm, you disappear. You know, there's an NPR story where you actually hear the audio of a Chinese journalist who's saying like, okay, the cops are outside my door. Looks like I'm going to go away for a while. And then they took him away.
Wow.
You know, we have, with our freedoms, we have a responsibility, all of us, to do our part. And that's what I do in all my books. That's why there's no central hero. That's why there's no magic bullet. It's all about us doing our part to solve the problem.
Well, what a perfect time to talk to you then, because this is so, you know, this is so of the moment, like everyone doing their part, you know, people complaining because they can't go to their hairdresser when like people are dying. Let's make sure everyone's okay first.
Yeah.
And we'll figure the rest out, you know, people first, money later, you know?
Yeah. If you're living in Michigan and you can't work and you can't feed your family and you might lose your medical insurance, then that's a legitimate concern, prompting a legitimate debate about opening the country. But if you're living in Southern California and you want to surf, then you're an asshole.
Well, that was an interesting diversion. I'm really glad to discuss that with you. I did want to talk to you about a couple of your books. I obviously your new book, Devolution.
Devolution.
Right. Yeah, that sounds fascinating, and I love Bigfoot stories. So tell us about that.
Well, people always say to me, "What's your fascination with zombies?" Or now you're fascinated. There's no fascination. I'm scared. They scare the hell out of me. It's a very simple premise. Like with my zombie books, if there was a real zombie attack, what would I do? How would I survive? Same thing with this. If I was living in the Cascade Mountains and I was attacked by Bigfoot, how would I survive? So the premise is, it's a very high-end, high-tech eco community called Greenloop, nestled at the foot of the Cascade Mountains. And these are not filthy hippies off the grid. They are the grid. This town is the new Levittown. High-tech, wired in, telecommuting to work, smart homes that if anything breaks, you don't have to do anything. The home sends a signal to the company.
Time or future?
Right, yeah, like either right now or next year. And like I said, if the house, anything goes wrong, sends a signal to the company that sends a handyman out in an electric driverless van, and you tap on your phone and you get drone deliveries of fresh groceries. So you can live with all the comforts of the Upper East Side of Manhattan, but you can go out for a walk in the woods on your lunch break. Doesn't get any better than that until Mount Rainier erupts. And these people are cut off and forgotten because Mount Rainier blows in the direction of Seattle and they're outside the blast zone. So nobody's looking for them. And this little neighborhood of very highly educated, highly paid David Sedaris fans don't know how to change a light bulb. And that's all right. David knows I say this. He's a friend of mine. He loves the book, by the way. He gave me a blurb. God bless him. But yeah, these people are the top of the pyramid with the skills that have brought them to the top according to the rules of society. but then the pyramid inverts and they're at the bottom. And they can't take care of themselves, and they need to learn really fast because they're running out of their week's worth of fresh delivery groceries, and winter is coming. And if that's not bad enough, the eruption has also driven a pack of very hungry, very large Sasquatch creatures away from their traditional. I call it a pack.
That's
I don't
great. More than one. I love that.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh it's of course it's a family group. It's you know, they're animals. You can't just have one. How would one reproduce?
Good point.
Well, because that's what I write about. I get away from the supernatural. If Sasquatch really existed, if they were nothing but a species of great ape living in North America, how would they live? How would they hide? How would they feed? How would they reproduce? How would they stay away from us? That's what I try to answer in Devolution, because it comes down to the fact that these hungry Sasquatch creatures, who are not good or evil, they're just hungry, they need to stock up for the winter too. And they come across a pen of sheep, and it basically turns into Ira Glass and Fran Lebowitz versus Bigfoot.
Sounds great.
I like it.
Yeah, it sounds great. I can't wait to read it. I was also looking at the graphic novel you did about the Harlem Hellfighters, which I thought was really fascinating. Is that based on a true story?
Yes. Oh God, yeah. The Harlem Hellfighters is a true story. In World War I, about 100 years ago, a unit of African American National Guardsmen signed up to fight in the war to make the world safe for democracy. And their own government set them up to fail. Gave them bad weapons, gave them bad training, sent them to the Deep South, hoping there would be a race riot. Because if it was a race riot, the unit would be published and they wouldn't be sent overseas. Set them up for that. But they didn't fight back. And they got sent over, and then they were forced to do manual labor. And then when they complained, they were given to the French army. Go. You Frenchies, you can have the black guys. And they fought with such valor and courage that they ended up coming home as one of the most decorated units in the entire U.S. Army.
I love a good end to a story. That's great.
Oh, yeah, no, it's a win. It's a solid win. The first American of any color in World War I to win the French Croix de Guerre was a black guy named Henry Johnson from Albany, New York.
Oh, that's amazing. And I bet so many people don't know anything about that. That's fascinating.
No, and because, after World War II, most of World War I was forgotten anyway.
Right.
But right after the war, our government, our journalists, our system tried to hide that, because the last thing they wanted was Black America thinking, wow, look what is possible. And that story was I believe, intentionally buried up until World War II, when everything was buried.
Yeah. Yeah, my dad was in the French Foreign Legion. He escaped Nazi Germany, managed to get to Algiers and join the French Foreign Legion. I still have his buttons from his uniform.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah, and that generation didn't tend to talk about their experiences in the war until like the Shoah project and things like that. A lot of them just didn't want to relive those years. I mean, what they saw must have been brutal.
Yeah, we can't imagine. We can't imagine, but we have our own trials, they won't let us surf. So. And
I can't get my roots done. Oh no.
I know. Oh my God. Oh, I need a haircut. Oh my, I mean, literally I saw a woman holding up a sign, surfing is not a crime. Well, it is if you get yourself infected and then you cough on someone who has compromised lung abilities and you kill them.
It's just such short-sighted, petty bullshit. It's just,
well said.
Everybody should be, I think the difference with World War II and World War I, I'm not so sure about World War I, but World War II, everyone was in it together.
Yeah, well, this is what I write about. I write about problems that have solutions. I don't like horror films where everybody's doomed. Like I said before, that's not my thing. Like, to me, the scariest horror are movies where it's that the problem is solvable, but we're not solving it. I don't know if you ever saw the greatest zombie story ever told, which was Dawn of the Dead. I ain't got shit on George Romero.
Yeah, of course.
But the director's cut of Dawn of the Dead, there's a great scene where they're watching TV and Steven is saying, like, why don't people just organize? Like, why don't they just do the right thing? This is so solvable. That to me is the kind of story I like to write.
And it's like the main misunderstanding of humanity. Like, why the hell aren't we like banding together to, fight these things? I don't, this division, that's being encouraged.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's always, as they said in The Dark Crystal, the great conjunction. There's a conjunction of, I think, stupidity, greed, agenda.
Yeah.
Some people like this because there's a reason that we don't enforce this federal disaster plan, because then the federal government could fail, and then the people who want smaller government can use that as an argument. They can say, oh, you see, big government, they tried and they failed. We don't need big government. Well, they failed because you wouldn't let them succeed. But you can see how that kind of agenda could flourish if manipulated just right.
Yeah. And we're so manipulated now by so many, like, there's so much media out there when I grew up, it was like Walter Cronkite.
Right. And that's the way it is.
Brinkley, Helena Brinkley. I mean, there were a couple of news channels and you trusted them. And I kind of trust that they were telling us the truth. I don't feel that they were giving us propaganda.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's naive. Look.
No. There was a trust. There was a trust between us, the public. There was a bond with the press. They had to do the right thing. Our government, they did lie to us, of course, but they understood at the end of the day, like, they work for us. And we got that. And so I've always been fascinated by that, and I've always tried to talk about how systems break down. Be it Zombie Survival Guide, where it's a system breaking down, like the power going out or the water's not running, or World War Z, where countries are breaking down. In Devolution, I talk about this community that is based on comfort and not on resilience. And what I mean by that is our civilization right now, particularly when it comes to technology, is where we're trying to create the most comfortable, easy society we can, but we're not thinking about what happens when things break. What's the backup plan? What's the reserve? What's the stockpile? We don't think about that anymore. Tech companies certainly don't think about that anymore. I mean, they literally say, move fast and break things.
Yeah.
And that's what happens to this community. They think they're living in the world. They think they're connected. They don't realize those connections are severed when Mount Rainier erupts. And so in order to tell these stories, I have to do just an insane amount of research, because to me, the real world is much more interesting than anything I can make up.
And it just gives it, gravitas that, you know what you're talking about, because there's, nothing will take you out of a story faster than, like,
Oh yeah.
not.
Oh God. I mean, nothing takes me out of a story faster than people having a prolonged gunfight inside. Because in real life, you fire a shotgun inside a confined space. You're done. You're deaf. That's it. There is no way you're going to fire a machine gun inside a steel submarine and ever hear anything ever again. So that's the kind of stuff I like to talk about. So, I mean, in Devolution, I didn't just talk to real volcanologists. I didn't just read books from real primatologists. I didn't just talk to the tech guys to make sure Green Loop would work. I didn't just make the actual weapons my characters have to make with the tools they have and the materials they have. I went to the Pacific Northwest. I've been going up there actually every summer for years, but I went to the exact spot to see if my characters could walk out. And I got news for you. You can't even walk in.
Wow.
That's how punishing that terrain is.
That's fascinating. So the book drops in June 16th?
It does. We had to delay it a month because it
Yes.
wasn't safe to get one of the many reasons is it wasn't safe to get our cast and crew for the audiobook in a studio
Right.
to record.
Right.
So we all had to set up home studios, including me. Let me tell you, you need qualified professionals to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Although the one nice thing about this is when I worked on the previous documentary I did, which was about Joe Lansdale, I started about a year ago. And so I didn't do online video interviews because the quality, no one would have accepted the quality in a feature film. So I just did voice interviews. Whereas now, like, everyone's accepted this. This is fine. So.
This is it. I mean, it's back to those grainy footage of like World War I where people were moving really fast because the camera they had to crank. Well,
yeah.
Here we are, folks.
Yeah. When it's really interesting when you see like the World War II footage in color, because there's so much of the black and white, but when you see it in color, it suddenly takes on such a different, like, oh my God, this really happened. This isn't just.
Makes it human. You have that connection. And that's kind of what I try to do is I try to take big stuff and make it personal, make it human. And as far as I'm concerned, there's no reason that any artist shouldn't be doing that. I mean, that's what science fiction and horror used to be. I mean, every good horror story used to have a message behind it. I mean, my God, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Dracula, and I mean, just all the Wolfman, all the old classic horror. There was some deep social commentary. And then, of course, Romero.
Well, I think they're morality tales, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And if they're done well, you get the message without being hit over the head by it.
Right. You don't want, like you said, you don't want to bash someone over the head. You don't want to bore them to death. You don't want to scare them away. You don't want to insult them by being talked down to. First and foremost, you tell a great story. You take people on an adventure. They have a good time, and maybe they learn something along the way, or maybe years later they go, "Huh, that's what he was trying to say."
Yeah, and that's a legacy. That's quite a legacy to leave behind something that will touch someone, in 5 years, 10 years. That's what making art is about, right?
I mean, to this day, I don't watch a news report without thinking about Robert Heinlein's Starship Troopers. That guy, he packed a lot into just a few pages.
Yeah. Well, all those guys like Arthur C. Clarke and Heinlein and all those guys, like so much of the things they said now are so appropriate. I'm like,
every episode of The Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Wow.
The monsters are out on Maple Street, is it? Or yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That's where we are.
Yeah, that's where we are.
So, is there anything else we can promote for you or let people know? Or are you gonna? You obviously can't do any signings, with this going on. But
I think we're trying to figure out how to do that. I think maybe we're trying to figure out how to do
maybe virtual signings or something.
Maybe virtual signing. Yeah, because for me, I like to personalize.
Sure.
This is why this is hitting me particularly really hard, because I built my career one handshake and one personalized book at a time. So I'm not sure what the future will hold, but we will adapt. We have to adapt. I'm doing little vignettes now for the History Channel, little videos online.
Oh, that's amazing. And when are those screened, or where can you find those?
My second one dropped today.
Okay.
You go on my Twitter feed, Max Brooks Author, and there it is. And because I'm doing the history of disease.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, the first one I did was Ignaz Semmelweis, the doctor who taught doctors to wash their hands. And today I'm doing one about Joseph Lister, who taught doctors to wash everything else.
Right. And I know this is slightly off topic, but how do you see this in relation to the Spanish influenza that killed so many people? Or is it very similar, or?
This one we're living in now?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Yeah. I mean, well, this is the thing is like, pandemics tend to have a very predictable cycle to them. And that's why a lot of things I wrote in World War Z are coming true today, because I didn't predict the future. I just looked at the past And like I based it on SARS and other viruses. But yeah, what tends to happen in pandemics, especially if you've had a good run and there hasn't been one in a while, people tend to take it for granted. I mean, that's the thing about the influenza, was it was still just influenza. People got influenza every year. So it's not like it was a brand new disease that could freak people out. People would say, well, this is just the flu. And it's like, no, it's not. Same thing with this. It's a respiratory disease where people are like, let's get a cold. It's Ebola. Yeah. Like, to me, Ebola is the fast zombie.
That was the scariest one for me. That terrified me. Oh my God.
And it terrified a lot of people. And that was our greatest weapon. See, Ebola wove in its own weakness because it was so scary. And because it was so obviously scary, it tripped our defenses. Oh my God, there's a new African disease that makes you bleed out your eyes and crash and die. We got to stop it right now. The key to a good disease, and when I say by good, I mean an effective killer, is it has to build in a way for us to blow it off.
Yeah.
We have
to oh, it's just the flu.
Right. We have to underestimate it. Yeah. Like Zika, people thought, oh, that's just for pregnant women. Whatever. I'm not pregnant. I'm not going to get pregnant. Whatever. Blow it off. AIDS, when I was a kid. Oh, well, that's just for gay people and IV drug users and Haitians. I'm not going to get that. That's a them disease. Anything that we can compartmentalize as a them disease is going to wipe us out.
Yeah.
That's so, like, to me, AIDS is the slow zombie. It's preventable and it's easily dismissible, but eventually can kill millions.
At least it took them fucking forever to fix it. I mean, I lost so many friends in the early days of that wave. So many.
Oh, it did. But eventually we stopped it, but we didn't stop it with a miracle cure. This is critical to everything I write about. We stopped AIDS with a pamphlet. We stopped AIDS with public education. It's no different than a zombie plague. You don't need a cure. You don't need a wonder weapon. You just need to know what to do, and then you got to do it.
So if people can tune in on your History Channel show airing tonight, and what's the segment called?
This one is about Joseph Lister. It's running right now. If you go to my Twitter page, Twitter feed right now, you just click on the video. It's 3 minutes, and you'll learn about the guy who made it safe to go to the doctor.
Okay. Awesome. I think that's I'll help you in any way to get that education out there, because the more people that do that, the less crazy people we have out there with M16 saying they want to go to the hairdresser. So thank you so much. It's such a pleasure talking to you. And would you like to come back once the book starts to?
Let's talk more. Let's talk more once it's out, and we'll cover some more ground.
And you can tell us about how you're doing signings, and we can promote those.
That would be great.
Such a pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Oppenheimer. Love your work.
Thank you. Bye. Stay safe.
You too.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Grr in Fangirl. If you enjoyed our show, be sure to visit our website, www.squeeprojects.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast and our YouTube channel for lots more squee as fuck pop culture content.